Last week, the federal government announced an investment to support women entrepreneurs. It's part of that was part of a recent top-up of $15 million to what's called Canada's first ever Women Entrepreneurship Strategy Ecosystem Fund. But is this kind of support enough? We're joined by Fatima Zaidi, who is an entrepreneur and CEO of Quill. And she runs a monthly breakfast where she speaks with other women entrepreneurs. Fatima, it's great to talk to you again. Can you tell us, please, is the government doing enough to help women business people?
Thank you, Andy. It's a pleasure to be here. Truthfully speaking, 1/3 of Canadian women have contemplated leaving the workforce to give their full-time attention to household responsibilities. A recent study done by the Prosperity Project found that 64% of female founders have lost clients, contracts, and customers, leading to laying off a disproportionately higher number of their staff compared to other companies. Whether or not the government is doing enough to support small businesses, I was really hoping to see the wage subsidy program loosen their parameters so that companies didn't necessarily have to have a payroll account open in March, and that hasn't happened yet. CEBA has been extremely inaccessible. We've applied 2 months ago and still haven't heard back due to the backlog. I know that the federal government has committed to doing things like a gender diversity analysis, but we need a high level of accountability and transparency because we need to know who's actually benefiting from government support. Most families are dual income, and we really need to strategize. Why is it that 1/3 of Canadian women are contemplating leaving the workforce? And, if families are dual income, the economic consequences could be quite significant. And we know that female-founded companies tend to be newer, smaller, less financed, which means less likely to survive.
Now, so when you say CEBA, you mean the Canada Emergency Business Account. The government says it has distributed about 300 million, but you say the paperwork for that thing is daunting?
It's not only overwhelming, but the entire process is extremely backlogged. You're supposed to hear back within a few weeks. We applied 2 months ago and still haven't heard back. The phone call queues are, a few days you're in queue to get through to a representative. And, I think the government procurement processes have been very overwhelming for a lot of small businesses. I'm actually very curious to hear what Trudeau is going to announce in his throne speech this week, and also hoping that, they're going to announce some new tactics to small businesses.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I misspoke there. Just in the latest week, they put out 300 million. Actually, the total funds distributed under CEBA so far, the government says, is about $30 billion. So
Absolutely.
750,000 businesses, they claim that 750,000 businesses have been approved for CEBA. So it looks like once you hack your way through the paperwork, you can get the money.
Absolutely, but that doesn't account for all small businesses, especially early stage companies that are really struggling to stay afloat. To be honest, the types of processes and government support that I'd like to see are better procurement processes that prioritize governments hiring small business contracts. I'd also really like to see grants for early stage companies where founders are all in with no supplemental income. We need to be able to incentivize female founders especially to continue going and take bigger risks. And then when it comes to hiring grants, most of what's eligible out there is, you have to either have a payroll account for full-time employees or you need to be able to match the funds, which isn't necessarily feasible for early stage companies. And so, there's a lot of different tactics that I'm hoping to see in this week's throne speech. I know that Trudeau has already said he will address the systemic issues that female founders are facing currently in the market, but I'd also really like to see a high level of accountability and transparency in what will actually move the dial and not just lip services. It's one thing to say you get extra points for being a female-funded company, but if your processes are so complicated that small businesses can't navigate it, it's not really going to translate and change. So I'd like to see bigger tax breaks for small businesses, more hiring grants, and cash in the hands of early-stage founders.
That's an amazing figure you started off with, that finding that 1/3 of women have considered leaving their work because domestic responsibilities are piling up. I mean, that would be such a loss to the workforce. All those skills and talents and promise for the future. Just give us one more thing that you think area where female entrepreneurs need targeted support.
You know, it's interesting. I was listening to the minister's speech this week, and they made a $375,000 investment to Tech Undivided this week in their commitments to support female founders. And to me, that feels like a drop in the bucket. That is the size of one average check size led by a male-led company. And again, it feels like a minimum charity fund where people are just looking to cross off quotas. I know there was some conversations around supporting small businesses with customer acquisition, but in the speech, there was no mention of how they're going to be matching small businesses with their customers, and the data was pretty vague and inconclusive. And so, to me, you know, it comes back to my earlier point. We're really looking for accessible grants and cash in the hands of founders. Pitch rounds is not guaranteed money. You're asking female founders to go through intense rounds of pitching with no guarantee that they'll get money. And also, is it leaving out early stage companies that are still looking to build traction and stay afloat during the pandemic? Chances are they probably are. So if you are going to put government support and processes out there, we need more accountability and transparency on who is qualified and who's actually getting the support.
Fatima, it's always great talking to you. Thank you very much indeed. Fatima Zaidi, the CEO of Quill.